In this session, I'm going to talk about how to mark your seam allowance on your top fabric, how to position your patterns on your fabric. As I said before, make sure your fabric is ironed, because otherwise it will be inaccurate if you've got any other creases. My advice would be to place all your patterns all at once, so to distribute them accordingly with the seam allowance, and try to be as economical as possible. Make yourself as a goal, so to cut your pieces and use as little fabric as possible, so it will be more economical. The reason is, the more fabric you save, the more you can, if it's any other mistakes or anything you need to do, you've got that extra fabric to work with. So if you don't have a cutting table, I've done it before in, in my flat, in the house, in the room, where I can just create a space on the floor and place my fabric, on the floor, on the carpet, so I can place all my patterns. And fold your fabric in half, with the right side in half. Make sure it goes along your straight of grain. Find the straight of grain, fold it in half, and then position all your patterns. Again, different size will get different positions. So if your model is slim and long, you probably will fit more patterns along the width of your fabric. If your model is, for example, short and wider, then of course it will be distributed differently. So each person will have a different distribution. But the most important for you to remember is just make sure you've got plenty of fabric around to do your seam allowance before you pin your pattern, and make sure your positioning of your patterns depends on your straight of grain. Extremely important, otherwise your code will not sit properly. So the straight of grain is important when you position. So each pattern will have, from your pattern drafting, you will have the straight of grain. Straight of grain will go, in this case, so it goes along with the center front, which will go along with straight of grain, which on my fold of the fabric will go along with that. So it's very, very important, the straight of grain. So please position your pieces correctly. The next part is tracing all your patterns around. And for that, I'm going to use white chalk. And as I said before, white chalk, I use Tailor's chalk. I'm going to use white. And what I'm really going to do now is sharpen my chalk. So on the little plate, I always have a little plate with me, or paper somewhere or little box where I can sharpen my chalk. And I constantly do that when I do my seam allowance, when I trace around, I will sharpen my my chalk constantly. So like that. Take your time, and then constantly there. Use the scissors. So I'm using the scissors, which is paper scissors. Don't use your fabric scissors, otherwise you will damage them. And just sharpen that. So if you need a little point there, so sharpen your point more. Yeah. The more it sharpens there, the more it gets. The line, when you are tracing, tracing all your patterns around, your line should be 1 millimeter, no more. So if it gets too thick, it became inaccurate. Very important that it's all nice and sharp. So then they pin your fabric or use a heavy weight. Depends how you use to attach your patterns. I don't have heavy weights with me here, so I'm in the lockdown in my house, so the only I have is pins, so use pins, whatever you have. Simply just to trace around. Okay. Make sure your chalk is still sharp. and then just go around your if you do need to sharpen more, you do that. The next I would do my seam allowance. So I wrote it down seam allowance where I need it, which just reminds me as well. So I don't do by accident less or more. So especially less, because if it's more, you can trim it away. But if it's less, you probably have to recut. So that's why it's very important. So I do, as a little reminder, write it down for myself. Use tape measure or ruler, whatever you prefer, whatever's easiest for you, and just mark all around very neatly. I just go and place my seam allowance. So different tailors have different ways, absolutely fine, that's what I do. So 2.5 along my neckline. So be precise. 5 centimeters go along the shoulder. So if I just move that there so you can see. I want to give 5 centimeters, 2.5 along armhole, side it's 2.5, 5 centimeters at the bottom, which is dropped waist, 5 centimeters here. Be very accurate with your seam allowance. The more accurate you are, the more easier for you would be to put things together. So this one is 5 centimeters. I need to make sure that. So very important. So if your chalk marks going to be too thick, it's not going to be accurate. So the next part I'll mark is my dart inside. Chest line, very important. So then I will connect them together. Waistline, so if I just move that. Yeah. Waistline is very important as well, so connect that. Center front. So the center front is one of the important things for you, because you can match if it fits at the front or not. So in order for me to do that, so just move my pin here, and I fold along the center line like that, and make sure it's, and fold it over back. So now I can trace my line center front very accurately. So that's one of the things I always do. And then of course transfer or any other information or little notice you will need. Is my break line is missing here. So I need to trace my break line, which is again is one of the important. I need to get my ruler. So you should have your break line. So I've got a little notice there, but I just forgot to draw the line. So it's very important, make sure you've got your break line transferred. So I'm going to mark my break line similar way what I do with the with the front. You can fold it and draw around, or just mark each point there when you actually done it, finished with your with the pattern. Then you can connect those lines together. So just going to mark my seam allowance on the side so you can see what I'm doing after. Okay. So this one is one of the most complicated patterns, so with more information than the rest of the pattern. So I'm not going to show you the rest is similar, in a similar manner you will do. So just mark my armhole seam allowance here. There we go. Okay. Here's at the point. I just don't do to the point. Just mark. So sorry if I just show you, showing you and you're not seeing it. So just mark my seam allowance all around here, and here at the point, just as long it's 2.5 here, you know, you don't need to create a massive point, otherwise you ended up with extra fabric, and sometimes it gets quite confusing. So that's what I do. Lots of tailors do different. So now, when you've done that, is you can cut it out. So I will usually just cut it out at that point. But so for me to speed up and not waste time, because you can do that by yourself, I'm just going to move things so it's all still together. So it's important. So the next part, I'm going to transfer all my information, all my lines before I do anything else. So yeah, you can cut the first and then trace your information. So there you go. So I'm going to do that straight up so you can see. The chalk has to be very sharp. Remember that. Keep sharpening your chalk. There. So my break line is very important to do that. That's it. Okay, so that's my notch mark. Helps me with to attach the sleeve. There we go. So the next part would be I will just cut everything right by following all my marks there. So that's as full information I have on the so that's the finishing of the dart as well. It helps me to transfer the all the information later on. There we go. In a similar manner, you will do with the rest of your patterns. You place them and make sure the straight of grain follows a straight of line on the fabric, and then just place them around in order so it's accurate with extra or where appropriate seam allowance you needed. I hope this helps you, and I'll see you later in the next session. Bye.